asked if we could help out in any way. And of course, you know, we were more than happy to help. We could do our part any way that we possibly could. And basically we did that. We went up and orbited near the Pentagon, and also just conducted air traffic control. As the EMS helicopters came in, we would guide them in and give them a place to land, keep everybody safe, out of the smoke, and coordinate the effort so everybody was, it would be a more smooth transition for everyone coming in and out.
Steve, I know that you get very busy. You're flying a helicopter, which takes absolute concentration all the time. You're coordinating with the other aircraft that's around there. But at what point did you start to look at what was on the ground and really think about what you were seeing?
Well, during the lulls, when we would have everybody on the ground or nobody coming in or out, of course, and at that point I would just take a look, and I tell you, just looking at the hole in the Pentagon and the whole of the scene down on the ground is just amazing. The effort of all the people, and it's just, at points it was just shocking to me and surreal, in fact.
Steve, we should also point out that the rules for flying were really suspended for you yesterday. Washington, for anyone who flies around it, is a labyrinth of restricted airspace due to the Pentagon, due to the airports, due to the White House. But what did they tell you yesterday when they asked you to take off?
Well, basically, normally the procedure is to contact the Reagan Tower, National Tower. However, they weren't in operation, of course, and so we were coordinating through the Air Force fighters that were overhead at first, and then also with the Park Police helicopters who were on scene as well. And they basically said, get over here in the fastest way you can, which means direct to me.
And we should also point out that while you were up there and while we were live on the air yesterday, police were alerting us as to the possibility of another threat, yet another jetliner possibly hijacked heading your way. What was happening in the skies while we were reporting that here on the ground?
That's right. We got the same reports in the helicopter from both the Air Force and from the Park Police helicopter unit that was there. And basically we were told, just make sure we have our head on a swivel, basically looking out for anybody that might be coming in, and the possibility of this plane being, I heard at one point 10 miles out, but there were several aircraft they were tracking, not just this one possibility, just the one possible airliner that was 10 miles out, and then there were several that were low-level, slow-moving.
And there were F-16s up that were basically flying cover, making sure that who was ever up there was supposed to be up there.
That's right. They were identifying everyone visually. First, they would do an electronic ID, and if that failed, then they would go in and they would do a visual ID of the actual aircraft themselves.
Steve, were the other helicopters that you were coordinating, were they coming in on medevac missions, or were they just making their way to bring supplies in to the Pentagon area?
Actually, both. At first, it was mostly just EMS only coming in. We had very few going out initially, and actually during the whole process, there were very few EMS flights out. At the very beginning of the crash, there were flights in and out, but once we got on scene, that had slowed down a bit. But towards the end of the mission, I would say around 2, the mission had changed and it began more of a bringing supplies in, tents and triage kind of equipment to help set up the ground folks.
And Steve, we're on our screen right now. Our picture was taken on later on in the day yesterday, but before, when you were initially up, and really the smoke was really covering much of this huge building, the largest office building in the world by space, I'm assuming here that you could not have seen the true extent of the damage at that point.
Right. At times the smoke was rather thick, and you couldn't even look inside the building to see anything. And then once the wind began to pick up again, you would be able to look. As well as the firefighters, they would get what appeared to be, they would get a handle on the fire, and then suddenly it would flare up in a bit further down the west wall, or up actually more towards the north on the west wall. But times you couldn't see anything. That's true.
And, you know, we're looking down at that scene from yesterday as well, and I'm going to ask you, where did you land these helicopters? The helicopter pad, that big H that we see there, that, as it was today, was very, very close to the point of impact. There's a lot of emergency vehicles around in a major parking lot there, plus 395. Where did you get these helicopters in and out? Well, there's a clover leaf just to the west of the Pentagon itself,
and I can't recall what road that is now, but we were landing most of the helicopters in the cloverleaf itself. But I also have to say that during the EMS helicopters coming in and out, there were also VIP helicopters in and out, and we put those on the eastern side of the Pentagon just to deconflict all our traffic and help everybody get in and out, the people that needed to be there as well.
I want to ask you now, it's been about 24 hours or so since this has happened. You've had a chance to really digest the unique perspective that you had yesterday, virtually the only one in our area with it. What are your thoughts now, 24 hours later?
Well, I tell you, it's so unimaginable that this could happen, that somebody could take an aircraft and do what they did with it. It's just unimaginable.
Okay. Steve, we want to stop you right there. I want to thank you for joining us, because what we want to do now is go over to Bob Barnard, Fox 5's Bob Barnard, who is at the Pentagon with some breaking news. Bob, go ahead.
Okay, I'll have TLC right here. He's on the line.
Bob, this is Michael Gargiulo in the newsroom.
Please hang up and try again.
Okay, we were having some trouble with Bob. We're going to try and reestablish some breaking news from Bob Barnard. We're going to get to that as soon as we possibly can. What you're looking at now is a close-up view of some of the wreckage, and this has been a sight we've seen all too often in the past 24 hours. We've been watching this situation going on at the Pentagon, and as they said, one of the problems they're having there, which getting this fire out, is due to the solid construction of the Pentagon itself with layers of cement and wood, and they're doing what Fox 5's Holly Morris described as a trench cut, trying to both get some air to and water to this fire. But right now we do want to go to Fox 5's Bob Barnard live on the phone. Bob, go ahead. Okay, Bob, it's Michael. Can you hear us? Okay, we'll continue to try and reestablish with Bob. We do know he has something important that he wants to report, and we want to get it for him. We are going to switch gears now. We're going to go up to New York, and this has been a day after in New York City. The smoke is starting to clear quite literally. They're trying to get a better idea on casualties, on evacuations, and getting into these buildings they were not able to get to. We're hearing that New York City, south of 14th Street, which is basically downtown, has been shut down. We're going to go here to Fox's Maui Falconer live in New York.
We are a few blocks away from the worst terrorist event in U.S. history. Dust and soot still fly through the air and buildings still smolder. Thousands of people are missing, possibly presumed dead. Hundreds of firefighters are missing, dozens of police officers. But amid all the tragedy, there are glimmers of hope, stories of rescue. 9 people have been pulled from the rubble, and the search continues. U.S. terrorist targets the day after.